Alright, so Bomb Warrior is easily a top 5 deck in my opinion right now, so I would like to start off my guides doing this. For those of you who are new to my channel and don't know my credentials, just let me show you real quick. I am usually around a 200-ish ranked player. I had a bad couple of days on stream and fell to 430, but usually I hover between the 200 to usually about 500 range, so... And just keep that in mind. I'm a pretty good player, but definitely not like top tier Grandmaster level. But I feel like this should be able to help most people, right? I've played this deck about 40 times this season alone. Last season included, I've played it over 100 times, so I feel like I have a pretty good idea of what we're doing here. And also, there will be a link to a full budget version of this deck down below. It basically takes this deck, which is about 17,000 dust, and makes it about 6,000 dust. And that counts Galakrond, and Galakron's free, so it's actually more like 4,400. And yeah, let's just jump into it. Before I do, though, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, check out the Twitch, it would really help me out a ton, and if you want to, you can check out the coaching, which is in a community post, but really just join the Discord server, send me a DM, or send me a DM on Twitter, and we can discuss it from there. So without further ado, let's just jump into Bomb Warrior. Also, if you like this format, please let me know. I could also do it as some sort of like PowerPoint or like voiceover gameplays. It's just, I feel like this is better because I can talk about every single card individually. And let's just jump into it. So we're going to start off with Mulligans basically. Well, no, we're going to start off with the general game plan of the deck, then Mulligans, and then matchups. And yes, I will try to tell you how to beat some of the matchups, but there are some matchups that are just difficult to beat, like Face Hunter, because they just apply so much pressure it's hard to beat, but we'll get into that in a second. So the overall game plan of this deck is to control the board as best as you can with things like Brawl, Lord Barov, Coerce, Bladestorm, all that stuff, all while building up your weapon with Corsair Cash, along with Dr. Krasinov and some upgrades, and getting bombs into their deck, and then closing out the game if you can with Galakrond, because the new Galakrond says give your hero +3 attack this turn, so if you're not able to kill him with bombs, you'll hit him every turn while also still trying to control the board, and eventually whittle them down. You also have some pretty decently sized minions like Kronks and Blastmaster Boom, Deathwing in this deck, and if you run the version with Karagath, you also have him, who is a 10/10. And all of these things are difficult for a lot of classes to deal with, so there are times when you can just win with big minions as well. Blastmaster Boom usually being the main win condition that's not specifically bombs. So yeah, in terms of overall strategy of what to hit with the weapons and stuff, most of the time I try to control the board with the weapons, especially killing off important minions like Phase Stalker or the Veil Weaver from Priest, the 2/3. Or some spell damage minions in Tempo Mage so they can't get extra spell damage and or a draw from Cram Session or something like that. I just find it really useful, and overall, that's just what I like to do. There are a lot of times when I trade in a little bit too much. So if the minion's like probably say like a 1/1, like if you're playing the Mage, and it's the 1/1 little elemental bird that gives you an arcane missiles, you know the one I'm talking about. I would usually hit that. But I'm trying to get better at learning when to hit and when not to hit, and one of the things that I've been straying away from is hitting the really small things. In my defense, you can still kill it because it helps you set up good Blade Storms, so it's definitely still okay to hit, but if you want to go a little bit more aggressively, you can limit test a little bit with that, and it would totally be fine. Especially considering you have ways of killing off little minions like Shield Slam, Sword and Board, Whirlwind, and a couple of other minions down here, so it doesn't really matter. I would say ideally control the board, but if you want to go aggressive, or if it's late in the game and you're trying to push damage, like if they're at 13 health and you have several bombs in their deck, getting them down to 10 by hitting them with your weapon could potentially set up lethal with 2 bombs, so that actually works a lot of the time too. So it just becomes like, when do you want to hit their face versus when you want to trade? If you want to hit their face, it should be for a reason or to set up lethal or something, or if there's nothing better on the opponent's board. Normally though, I would recommend trading unless the minion is really bad, or you already have a minion on the board to trade into it with, like the Evil Quartermaster or any of these other little things. Surprisingly enough, this deck doesn't have that many minions. It's very control based and weapon heavy, so you're never really going to have that much board presence, so don't worry about that. Your presence is mainly the weapon, so if you ever feel like you're behind on board, you're supposed to feel behind on board. You really have like no pressure or anything to apply on the board. It's literally just your weapon. It is Bomb Warrior. Your entire win condition is bombs. Okay, so let's talk about the mulligans real quick, and I'm basically just going to go over every card, tell you when to keep them, and if you should ever keep them. Spoiler alert, pretty much all these legendaries down here, except Blastmaster Boom, you should dump every single time, along with Kobold Sticky Fingers, Doctor, Cutting Class, Brawl. Everything below Wrench Caliber, you get rid of, except Blastmaster Boom. And I will talk about Blastmaster Boom first, because I guess it's easier to just cover this one card, and then start from one and go down. Basically, why you want to keep Blastmaster Boom is into decks like Mage and or Priest, and even some Warrior matchups and Druid matchups where you really will need that tempo spike to help you win the game. Into Druid, if your turn 7 isn't Blastmaster Boom to try to finish them off, they could very well swing the board in their favor with their 10 mana or however much mana they have at the time, and Guardian Animals and whatnot. So Blastmaster Boom is really good at closing out the game there. Really good at doing a ton of damage to a Priest out of nowhere, because your biggest problem with Priest is 1, weapon removal, and 2, healing. But Blastmaster Boom can really help against that, because it can do a lot of burst damage to their face, especially considering they usually don't have that many minions on the board. So most bombs will go face. Into Mage, it just applies a ton of board pressure. If it forces out removal and stall a lot of the time, and if you force out a Frost Nova and you're like, okay, next turn I'm just gonna Blade Storm anyway and have the bombs go into your face, that can be really, really good. Also, neat combo for 8 mana, Blastmaster Boom and Whirlwind. You can do a lot of burst damage. I'm just saying, it's actually worth it to kill off your own bombs a lot of the time to do burst damage. Not always, but it can be. And then another combo is Blastmaster Boom. If he doesn't kill your stuff, trade into his face with everything and then play Brawl, and then see where the bombs go after that. It's a pretty good way to set up lethal a lot of the time. But yeah, that's it. Basically, Blastmaster Boom is helpful in beating really slow matchups like Priest, like Druid, where you're going to need to close out, and Mage. So he's good into those if you want to keep him. Everything else, you don't want to keep him, though. So let's talk about Shield Slam. Shield Slam is good into aggro matchups. I'd say that really only keep it into Rogue or Hunter. This is a great way for 3 mana to Hero Power Shield Slam, kill off a low health minion, especially into hard aggro decks with which this deck struggles against. Sword and Board is pretty much always a keep just because it's a 1 mana, deal 2. Pretty much every single class in the game, except for maybe Warrior, will have at least 1 or 2 small minions to put on the board, and Sword and Board will definitely help you deal with that. If you're playing against a Warrior, if you're playing against maybe even a Mage and you think it might be Turtle Mage, there's an argument to be made to not keep it, but I'd say like 80% of the time Sword and Board is a pretty keepable card into most matchups. Like, I'm trying to think of a matchup that I don't want to keep it in, and the only ones are Bomb Warrior and Turtle Mage. And that's it. Most other mages have minions and are pretty good, and this is pretty good to deal with it. Upgrade, only keep if you have a weapon. If you don't have a weapon, get rid of it. Or I guess if you have Corsair Cash. Whirlwind can be okay against Rogue, and to every other matchup, get rid of it. The only reason it's good into Rogue is because they have a lot of 1 health stealth minions, and this can do really well at killing them. But most of the time, get rid of it. It's very infrequently that you should keep it, and more people are playing Secret Rogue now. So because of that, I'd say that Whirlwind is even less likely of a keep. So basically, almost never keep Whirlwind. Only keep Upgrade with a weapon. Corsair Cash, keep literally 100% of the time. Literally 100%. This is the staple card in your deck. Keep it every single time. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You just keep this card. Blade Storm, I'd say it's a pretty solid keep. I'd say it's one of my most solid keeps in the deck. It goes like Corsair Cash and probably like Sword and Board and Blade Storm on similar levels. Blade Storm is just so good at dealing with 1 to 2 individual threats. It can absolutely decimate boards if the Druid has 2 of the same minions. It can really help you against Libram Paladin and killing 1 big buffed minion. It can help you into a lot of the matchups that have like 1 or so big minions. So I really, really like Blade Storm. It helps into aggro. It can help into bigger decks as well. I'd say that this is a pretty solid keep, as many games as you can get. Coerce, it's a little bit, it's worse than Blade Storm, so I wouldn't usually keep Coerce because you need to combo with it. Evil Quartermaster, keep pretty much every game. I don't really see a reason to not keep it. It's a guy that you can get on the board and it gives you a little bit of armor and some extra resources, so he's solid. Lord Barov, only keep into Druid in my opinion, because you're going to need him to kill off big minions. And I guess you can also keep him into Paladin as well, because he can kill off big buff minions really easily. Everything else you don't want to keep him into. Shield block I keep. It's not like an outstanding card or anything busted, but it is definitely quite a solid deck, or quite a solid card, so I'd recommend keeping it in pretty much every hand that you get it. It's not a card that I would mulligan for, right? Like Corsair Cash, I'd mulligan away cards trying to get Corsair Cash. I wouldn't do that for Shield Block, or Bladestorm, or Sword and Board, but all three of those cards are pretty good if you have them in your opening hand, so I just keep them. Horde Pillager, usually don't keep, and Wrench Caliber, keep only if you don't have Corsair Cash, because it's better to at least have the weapon on 4 than not have the weapon, so that way you can get weapon synergy with Cutting Class, the Doctor, and upgrade, put bombs in the deck for Blastmaster Boom, and set up all of your combos. So basically, the cards that you want to look for ideally are Sword and Board, Corsair Cash, Bladestorm, Shield Block, and Wrench Caliber, and Quartermaster, I guess. And then Shield Slam is pretty good into aggro. And then Lord Barov is pretty good into control match, or big matchups like Druid and Paladin. So let's talk about all the matchups real quick, because I think that that is the last important thing to discuss. And I'm going to be looking at it as if it's like in Legends, so I'm basically going to be, because those are the matchups that I'm most familiar with, so I'm basically going to go over as many as I can go. But if you are seeing some decks that are from like, in like gold or lower or whatever, and you're just not seeing a lot of these decks, and you're seeing a lot of different decks, I apologize. But you can still use the general game strategies for this. So first we have Aggro Demon Hunter, which is not a great matchup for you, because they can develop very wide boards very quickly, and push a lot of damage with weapons which you have no removal for. Yeah, basically all you want to do into this matchup, and I guess I'm going to cover this, and Stealth Rogue and Face Hunter all in the same one, because they all do essentially the same thing. They get wide boards really quickly, and apply a lot of pressure, which is very hard for you to deal with. So what you want to do, like I said, is keep Shield Slam if you can, Sword and Board, into Demon Hunter, Hunter, and Rogue are the only times I would ever keep Whirlwind. And honestly, if I don't have any other early game removal, I will actually keep a Whirlwind just in case a lot of the time. Bladestorm can be phenomenal. Evil Quartermaster can be phenomenal. This is one of the matchups where you do not keep Blastmaster Boom. You get rid of everything below Wrench Caliber and search for early game removal. That is it. That is the whole goal of this. Okay. So yeah, that's what you want to do in aggro. Aggro is historically a bad matchup for this deck, only because unlike a lot of other control warriors, this one's design is to do damage and develop your weapon. So yeah, you're not, like I said, you're not gonna have that much stuff on board, and you have a good removal, but your removal is more tailored towards like a medium board of big minions, not a wide board of tons of little minions that you have to deal with constantly, right? So that's probably the biggest weakness of this deck. I just want to get that out of the way right now. Those are the 3 real big losing matchups, and I'm going to talk about the 2 other kind of losing matchups or 3 other kind of losing matchups real quick, and then we will jump into all the other good matchups. So the other bad matchup is Weapon Rogue, very similar to the aggro matchups, except a lot of their damage comes from weapons, which honestly you have no way of interacting with. It's literally why I put in Kobold Sticky Fingers. You can also run Acidic Swamp Ooze if you want. Essentially, I was like, this matchup is awful. It's like the worst matchup you could possibly have. So might as well put in one way of dealing with Weapon Rogue. It also helps into Demon Hunter. It also helps into the Mirror Match. It also helps into some other matchups as well. So it's not an awful card, but honestly, Weapon Rogue is probably one of your worst matchups, mostly because of the fact that you have aggro in it, so it's already kind of bad, and then you also have weapons, so it's something you can't even interact with. So basically, it's the same game plan as any other rogue deck, except it's a little bit harder, and I run Kobold Sticky Fingers to help me beat it. The next 2 are Turtle Mage. If the Turtle Mage plays correctly, and they can get Potion of Illusion, they can Potion of Illusion their hand to 10 cards every turn, and make them never draw bombs. And then the only way that you can win from there is Blastmaster Boom, but Mage has a lot of healing, so basically if they get their combo off, there's no way you win. If they don't get their combo off, hit them with your weapon into their face as much as you possibly can, because they're not going to be super aggressive to begin with. unless it's a minion like you have to kill or it's taunt or something like that. And if they develop a board, you can always just kill it with your weapon removal. But this matchup, you need to rush down quick, so just slam them. And then the last one is Libram Paladin. They just have ways of generating too many big minions, especially if they get out Lady Liadrin. They can just keep remaking a big minion. They can literally make Silverhand recruits like 8/8s for 2 mana basically because their Librams are free. It can be really problematic, so basically for that one, you want to control the board with your spells and stuff, and again, mostly go face, but if you have to kill a minion, kill it. And also try to kill minions as quick as possible, so that way they are not able to pump their minions. That's basically the game plan with Libram Paladin. Just kill off their minions as much as you can so they can't pump, and if you have removals or spells that you can kill minions, do that, and then go face with your weapon. Okay, so now let's talk about some of the other matchups. Now let's talk about, I guess, Controller Soul Demon Hunter. That matchup is kind of rough for you because they are able to heal a lot with the lifesteal weapon. Once again, Cobalt Sticky Fingers can really shine in this matchup, but essentially what you want to do is similar to Libram Paladin, except you don't need to worry as much because they're not going to have as many minions. With this matchup, since you don't have to waste mana on removal and minions on the board a lot of the time because they don't have that many minions in Soul Demon Hunter, a lot of the time you have mana left over and you can just press that hero power button. And over time, over the course of the game, since it's a pretty slow matchup, you'll find yourself at a pretty high amount of health a lot of the time. So in most matchups with this deck, you'll actually gain like 12 armor plus just from hero powers, which means that this matchup actually isn't that bad for you because Soul Demon Hunter only has a limited amount of damage because most of their damage comes from weapons and cards like Glavebound Adept and the Lapidary, which do like burst damage for 1 turn, but other than that, they don't have like a ton of minions, and the minions that they do have, you can kill relatively easily with single target removal. So honestly, the matchup's pretty good. You just gotta deal with their couple of minions when you can, and usually go face with your weapon. Now let's talk about Druid. We have Malygos and Guardian Druid. They're both very similar. If they ramp and pop off, there's not much you can do, but Bladestorm does allow you to potentially have the win here. I will say, Malygos Druid, the best way that you can beat Malygos Druid is just try to armor up as much as you can with with the extra turn. It's similar to Control Demon Hunter or Soul Demon Hunter, but the problem is that they have a lot of burst potential and Alexstrasza. So what you want to do as much as you can is gain armor, kill the minions as soon as possible so you don't lose that much armor, and hopefully when they Alexstrasza you, you still have like 25 health because you have like 10 armor left, and you'll be fine. Most of the time, like with Soul Demon Hunter, you will have a lot of times where you don't have all of your mana to spend, so armoring up really just helps in this matchup. And then Guardian Druid is a little bit better because they'll get giant wide boards and you can easily punish with Barov and Brawl. And they draw a lot of cards, so usually you'll be able to kill them off with bombs a lot easier. Let's talk about Small Spell Mage, I guess, real quick. Small Spell Mage is not that bad. This is a matchup where I'd use my weapon to kill off minions a lot of the time. Save big removal spells for when they play their Mana Giant or Chenvala to try to control the board that way. Killing off smaller minions can help set up for Bladestorm, so if they have like a Sorcerer's Apprentice on the board and Chenvala with like 2 5/5s, weapon, kill Sorcerer's Apprentice, Bladestorm is really good at removing the board. And it's a pretty decent matchup for you, because they also draw a lot of cards, and they're not very minion based, although the minions, they do have some. You just control the board, and then hope that they don't RNG get spells that like absolutely destroy you. Their free spells and removal don't really affect you, so a lot of the mage spells they discover will be useless anyway. So overall, I think it's pretty good. The biggest problem is probably Mirror Entity, actually, because it forces you to hit 0 to like little taunt minions, which is kind of bad for you, actually, because a lot of your damage comes from a couple of attacks from a weapon and trying to deal with his minions. You can deal with those minions with, say, Sword and Board or Bladestorm, but most of the time, they're just an annoying nuisance. But you should probably win this matchup just by slowly putting bombs in their deck, controlling the board when you can. You don't need to play a ton of minions. Again, it's similar to Soul Demon Hunter and Malygos Druid. They're not going to do too much, but they will do a little bit more, so you won't be able to armor up as much. You'll need to use some of your removal. Next, Mirror Match. You just basically go for... you just basically go for, what's it called? Value with the weapon, because they don't run any weapon removal. You can sometimes cheese them if you get your sticky fingers out. It's pretty nice. And let's see here, what else? No, yeah, with the mirror match, it's really just whoever gets more value out of the wrench calibers. I'm pretty good into the mirror match because I get a ton of value out of them, and by that I mean I'll actually get rid of wrench caliber if I want Corsair Cash instead, so that way I can get a ton of value. I will say though, sometimes it's better to just get wrench caliber out there than hope for Corsair Cash. So I will actually say that keeping wrench caliber into this matchup is good. And this is one of the matchups where I think Blastmaster Boom on curve is good and you should keep. Because having wrench caliber and just having the bombs in their deck and getting Blastmaster Boom out and having those bombs out on the board and applying that pressure means you guaranteed have it. And if your opponent doesn't have it, you're way ahead of them anyway. So honestly, just keep wrench caliber, Blastmaster Boom, and just go for as much value with your weapons as possible. Pretty much almost never trade into minions because you have removal. Just go face with everything and then hope your bombs kill them off. It's pretty 50-50, honestly. It's a mirror match. And the last one is Priest. Priest is actually a good matchup for you unless they run weapon removal. And even if they do run weapon removal, eventually your Galakron will outdamage them. They don't have that many minions, so your weapon removal is usually fine dealing with them. And a lot of them don't run weapon removal, so you're able to get bombs in their deck pretty consistently. Even if they do have weapon removal, you have a Horde Pillager and another Wrench Caliber. And if they're going Highlander Priest, which is, I think, a more popular version of Priest, bombs disrupt their Highlander combo. So basically, you just apply pressure and go face with everything you can, and use your removal to kill off their minions. Sometimes killing off their small minions to set up Blade Storms again. And that's about it for this deck. Those are the main matchups that you want to go for. And the mulligans that I would use, and the overall game plan of the deck. A couple of notes I would like to make right at the end, though, is 1. Dr. Krasnov, sometimes you're going to just have to play him for a 4/4 rush minion. If you're in a bind and you're into an aggro deck and you don't have a weapon, you're just going to have to play him so that way you don't die. It's just something that you have to do. Kronks, you don't want to save him to play with Galakron a lot of the time. You actually want to use him to draw, because drawing with this deck is really good because it allows you to draw other things more consistently, like weapon pumps and big minions and whatnot. So using him for draw is really good. And a 6-mana 6/6 is pretty decent, considering turn 6 is kind of iffy for this deck anyway, because it's your only 6-drop. Deathwing is a pretty good card, and sometimes it's honestly worth it to just play him as a 12/12, especially if he has nothing else. And that's basically it. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you in the next one. See ya.